Sorry, I'm sick for the listeners. So this is your first experience with Sam Kieth, right?
It is. I hadn't even heard his name before.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's nuts, because he's like your favorite artist's favorite artist, you know?
Mm,
Because he passed away recently.
I saw.
And like I knew that a lot of people respected him and stuff, but I really like after he passed, so many people that I had no idea had any relationship with him were just posting such kind messages and how he was the nicest person in the world and would try to help so many people with their art and stuff, which was just really dope to see because Sam Kieth, like I know I talk about Ted McKeever all the time, and I mentioned this in like my post about him, but Sam Kieth, if he's not tied with Ted McKeever, he's a really close second. His work and everything that he has done just means a lot to me. Before people think that Komik and I are trying to profit off of his passing, we planned this a while ago.
Long time ago.
Yeah, when we talked about doing the video for his channel, talking about Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, and I was like, oh, for my channel, we should also look at a book talking about Arkham Asylum, but Sam Kieth's. So, like, first impressions of Sam Kieth, what are they? Like, are you intrigued? Do you want to check out more of his stuff? Is it like what are your first thoughts about him?
I'm definitely intrigued about him. My main like input has been the behind the scenes of this, and then just reading about when he passed, kind of midway through as we were discussing making this video. I so sad because it's very similar to like when I started reading like Tim Sale or looking at Tim Sale's art and realizing like he's passed away. Like the just absolute gut punch it is. Like I just am now finding this creator that I'm like in love with, and I'm like, oh, that's just fucking awful. And I found him so charming in the behind the scenes, how passionate he is. It totally tracks what you were saying about other creators were saying how nice he is. He just seems so kind and just has such a love for this whole process that was infectious.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, when did this come out? Is there a year?
2010.
2010? Okay, this is kind of when he started to retire from, because he hasn't put anything out, I think, since the Batman and Max crossover. And then after that, he did like a cover here and there, like very like sporadically, nothing really high profile. And then he just kind of vanished, you know? He had a blog that he would post pretty regularly, and then his posts got a lot less detailed on his blog. So many posts on his blog are like so long and so detailed and talking about the process and everything like that, but it just got to a point where he was just posting pictures of his paintings and just saying like, here's a painting of a tree. I think that has to do a lot with the health problems that he was having later in life that no one knew about. Yeah, it sucks, but yeah, I'm glad you're intrigued by him.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check out. I know the Max is what he's known for. I haven't read it, but I'm super interested in reading more stuff from him.
Yeah, and I'll send you a whole list. I've read mostly everything by him. I will say I don't want to say I'm sailing the high seas to show this right now, but this isn't available anywhere digitally.
Oh my god, it's crazy difficult to find this.
Yeah, it's I've owned the physical copy for a long time now. Like I first read this probably 5 years ago, but I can't even buy it through like Amazon digitally. It's not on the DC streaming site. Like it's just frustrating. It's interesting because Sam Kieth at one point was such a high profile artist, but like his stuff is never collected into trades like past a certain point, and if they are, it's for like one printing, which I'm pretty sure that's what this is.
It's crazy because this is the first time, I mean, at this point I've read, you know, like a lot of comics in my like 6 or 7 months getting into it, and 6, 7, yeah. Like the only time I had ever run into an issue with something not really being on like Hoopla, which is like the library service I use, is if it's like really modern, like if it's absolute Batman and it's like issue, whatever the current issue is. That's like the only time I've run into that issue. Then it's always usually on like, you know, DC Unlimited or Marvel Unlimited or whatever. But this was like impossible to track. I had to track down this random ass comic shop in like the Midwest that would ship it to me, and I was just amazed at how niche. And then I was like just curious. So I was looking up forums and posts, and there's really not that much discussion about this.
I think that's because Sam Keith, there's a YouTuber named Jerk Comics who did like a fucking 10-hour series talking about Sam Keith's career and personal life and stuff like that. From watching that and reading interviews and reading his blog and stuff, it kind of seemed like after the Max finished, he kind of, I don't know, just kind of distanced himself from everything. And, you know, I don't know if you know this about Sam Keith, but he was a super insecure guy.
That self-doubt is super apparent. Like in the last page when he talks about the process, like he shits on himself multiple times. He's like, oh, I thought I could never really do this, you know, this type of art, or I was really doubting this. And my wife was really helpful in like validating this line. And like my latest rabbit hole is Rob Liefeld's Instagram. I've been like binging his reels. Even though I haven't read any of his comics, I'm just like addicted to his Instagram account. But he is so extroverted and bubbly, and Sam Keith seems so self-conscious, and it's so hard because I love this comic, and he should be.
I'm glad to hear you love it.
Yeah.
I don't want this to be a direct comparison of the two, but I think it's interesting seeing what two very different artists and writers can do with the same topic and the Arkham Asylum is the main character.
I totally agree. And I was very nervous that I would have trouble not comparing them, because this is 2010. Okay, so this is far after Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, which is, you know, we said in the last video, an absolute instant classic and an incredible comic everyone should read. It's also post The Dark Knight. It's also post Arkham Asylum, the fantastic video game. So it has a lot of things near it that touch on similar things. And I think the title, before I read it, also made me nervous. I think the title is actually very poor because it doesn't reflect what the story is actually trying to say. But I'm really happy that I feel like this is very complementary of those stories. It doesn't really clash in the way that you can't enjoy one without the other. I find that it's like, how do you write an Arkham Asylum story in 2010 that doesn't say something of one of the million things that's already been said? And I think we'll get into it, but Sam Keith did a great job carving out his own narrative that does feel really wholly unique.
I completely agree. Like, reading this makes me like Grant Morrison's story more, and vice versa. It feels almost like a parody of Grant Morrison's, and that's not to dumb this down at all. Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum feels like what we would imagine, you know, as a scary asylum filled with, you know, these monsters and deranged people and stuff like that. But this feels like what if this place actually existed, you know?
Yeah, and it's like, we spoke last time on how Batman works so well when there's supernatural elements. But I would say this, and I say this purely positively, is probably the least, like, it is the most realistic, practical Arkham Asylum / maybe even general Batman story I've ever read. Like, there's no really fantastical elements at all.
Besides Killer Croc being a fucking crocodile.
That's true.
It kind of feels like a workplace comedy.
I love that part. Yeah, 100%.
Like a workplace dark comedy. Yeah, so we start off with this. Yeah, it's Killer Croc. It's Killer Croc's big ass eyeball.
One of the things I was amazed with him, and you know a lot more about the technique behind it than I do, but in the behind the scenes, Sam Keith was like, I draw almost everything 6 to 15 times before I settle on it, which just sounds like maddening, pun intended.
Yeah.
And I think the mixed medium works really well. I mean, they're like, especially early on with the security guards and the introduction, it feels almost like a children's book. I mean, like this, if I showed you this to anybody, you would never guess that this is the type of story it is. And I think it's really good because the whole book takes place in 24 hours pretty much. And as the comic goes on and the day gets later and eventually it goes to night, you see the art kind of shift tone and medium. And I think it's a really powerful way to show how a 24-hour shift at this asylum does to a person's psyche in ways that are totally nonverbal.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, it feels like as the story goes on, so we start here, you know, it's a little gloomy, but then we're brought back. Like, because the point of view is from Sabi, I think is her name, Sable, the nurse. It's like she's kind of our protagonist loosely, because we jump around a lot.
Yeah.
But this here, it's vibrant, it's colorful, and then she's reminded of her work where it's gloomy. As the comic goes on, the colors get muted, more stuff gets revealed, and you can tell that it's eating the workers alive the longer that they're here. And it kind of plays with the idea that, like in Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, again, I'm going to try to make this the last comparison. You get the idea that there's a paranormal elements driving these people insane. With Sam Kieth's Arkham Asylum, it feels like the fact that you have to work there is driving the people insane. Like, they're getting antsy, all of these small things are building this tension that might not otherwise be there. Like the ticking of the clock, that ends up being really nothing. But I'm sure you've worked long shifts before, at like hour 11, hour 12, you're just getting pissed off. You're getting antsy. You want to leave. And that, in a fucking asylum filled with people that want to kill you, it keeps you on the edge of your seat, but it's sprinkled with all these fucking bits of humor, like real characters, like everyone here doesn't feel fantastical at all. Again, besides Killer Croc being a goddamn crocodile, like even the Joker's prank or whatever, it feels like a realistic thing. It doesn't feel like he's, blowing up people with chattering teeth and wanting to copyright fish with his face, like a bunch of crazy shit. Like, it feels very grounded. Like, and I think that was such a great direction for Sam Kieth to take this, because I really don't think I've read a Batman story this, not to use the same word again. Yeah, real, like grounded. Like, it's just fantastic.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because, and I want to preface, my day job is not like this. Like, I nowhere close. The actual comparison is not at all. But like the feeling of exhaustion and pain from hating work that these staffers feel like, it resonates as much as anything that I've read so far. And I feel it feels really powerful to me, because like at my job, it's a very, like, we have people all over the world in so many time zones. And one of the biggest relationships is like, us in US time zones in like the broader Western hemisphere, and then people in like Asia and like Southeast Asia too. And so the relationship that I feel with them can often be similar to what Sabine has with the night crew, where it's like you just want to keep the plate spinning long enough for you to get off and them to get on. And that's like the worst mindset to be, because it creates, the culture of like, burnout and resentment towards the other one. And that really hit home, because like so many times you're just hanging by a thread till like the other person can get on and you can get off. And I found that to be such an interesting angle that, I mean, just from an Arkham Asylum story, I never would have expected.
Yeah, it's just a brilliant route to take this story, because creepy stories about Arkham Asylum and stuff they're a dime a dozen, and they're great, like, for a reason. People love them for a reason. But this is taking that idea and giving it that traditional Sam Kieth fucking weirdness. Like, look at this fucking guy.
I didn't even notice him.
Yeah, like what the fuck's going on with him? And what's so interesting about Sam Kieth is that he's a master of so many different art styles. So like in the beginning, it's this beautiful tree, and it's like, this kind of looks like an eyeball, but it's the bathtub. It's so gorgeous. But then, we get some fucking like caricatures, we get super cartoony, everyone's ugly, and then boom, fucking Killer Croc jump scare. But we also get the goofy fucking caricature of him. And throughout this whole story, it doesn't really feel like anyone's in danger until the end. And I think that's intentional as a way to, highlight that antsiness that people get at the end of their shift.
Yeah, I one thing that I'm starting to differentiate as I'm getting into comics are artists who rely like on style, which is nothing wrong with that, and then artists who are just really good fucking artists, like who are just really skilled and technically sound. And like this is such a technically impressive work of art that obviously relies on its style, but like Sam Kieth is just so talented to be able to think of art with the same level of like priority and intentionality as he does the writing.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is in that back bit we keep mentioning where he's kind of reflecting on this story, he mentions that like he's not using his traditional styles for this. He wanted to try every other style that he can think of, and that this is more of an experiment. While I do wish he implemented more of his traditional like painterly style, this is still like look at Two-Face here. The scarring right here. Then yeah, we get a little bit of suspense, and then the ticking kind of interrupts that,
And I'm really happy I got this physically. This is only my second comic that I've owned physically. And I don't know if this is more common, but this is the first time that I've run into it where there's some double page fold where you have to turn it.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that is saucy. That is really saucy.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we should just dissect the narrative. How did you feel about like the story itself? Because with a lot of Sam Kieth's written work, not a lot, but an issue that people have with some of his stuff is that the writing isn't the best. Like he's a way better artist than writer. And a lot of his writing just kind of feels like, I know especially with the last few issues of the Max that he wrote, it just feels kind of stream of consciousness and like as a way to highlight the art. And the writing feels like an afterthought. And did you get that feeling at all reading this, or did you enjoy the story itself?
I didn't. I really enjoyed the story, and I think if it was me, like it's 97 pages. It's not like the scope is very, very small. It takes place over one day, and I think that maybe gave it a little more leeway for me. I did have issues with the story, but it was not that it was not prioritized over the art. That was not the issue for me.
What were the issues you had?
On the one hand, it is very beautiful, and this is going back to what we were saying, how do you justify an Arkham Asylum story in 2010? It's very beautiful that this could really exist with absolutely no Batman IP. This story could work if you made everything about Batman generic. Batman doesn't even show up, obviously.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, Batman, the character in the universe, lends itself to so much potential, and I don't think he utilized the uniqueness of this world to the extent that it could. Like, for example, like given the premise that Killer Croc is allowed to just live and is not put to death in this universe is kind of absurd given how much it tries to be like a workplace drama. I wish he used the fact that it is a Batman story a little bit more than he did.
You might be able to find this digital, but like he mentioned at the end, he has a mini series called Batman Secrets, and I think that's more of what you're looking for. Because I definitely think the whole intention of this was like, because I mean, it is funny just as a concept. Like, what if we take all of these cracked out, kooky, crazy people, that Batman, that's in the Batman universe, and just make them like as normal as possible.
True, yeah.
The expectations being subverted in that way highlights a lot of the humor. Like the Joker being obsessed with Antiques Roadshow,
Yeah.
Like that's ridiculous. And I don't think that would work as well if it was a more fantastical story.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think when he makes Harley Quinn like unattractive, which I think is a great, like, I love that he did that, because like to think that someone like this would be as hot as she usually is kind of like, very fantastical. And to make her look like an actual, what I imagine a serial killer to look like for her, I really like that decision creatively.
Yeah. What did you think of the structure of how the story's told? It's structured like an episode of a show. We only focus on one character or one storyline for a few moments, and then we have B plots and we have threads like connecting each of the stories, and I haven't read many comics, none off the top of my head, that are structured in this way. Like, there have been some where there are B plots, of course, and stuff like that, but this one just turns it up to, a sitcom or a drama.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the structure of it, and I think it's very impressive that he was able to do it in such a short length. Because, like, I think most, like, we were talking the advantages of a self-contained story versus a run. I think one of the advantages a long, 50-issue run could be is, like, you can have kind of fun, silly little side quests that really build out. I mean, it's like TV versus movies. But here, I thought he used stuff like Randy and the doctor make out in the broom closet. That is such a great, inconsequential piece of storytelling that, like, tells so much without feeling like every moment needs to matter. Every word of dialogue needs to be advancing the overall plot. So I think that was really masterfully done. The fact that it all takes place in a day was really, really well done. He's not trying to tell some, like, huge 3-act structure with twists and turns. It's, at the end of the day, the idea that these doctors and nurses and security guards are as trapped by the money and mortgages and society as these inmates are literally trapped within the walls. And I think that doesn't need to have such a focused and intense narrative. And that decision, I think, made the storytelling really, really work for me.
Because it doesn't feel like a critique on capitalism or whatever. Like, it very well could. It definitely... Again, it feels like real life. There are so many people where in jobs we can think of where it's like, why the fuck would people continue to have that? That job sucks. It's dangerous. It's bad for their mental health, whatever. And it just all boils down to, like, we all need money. And stuff like this where she's getting freaky with the doctor. It's it's realistic. When people work in a location for so long, and if they don't have a life outside of work, this is the only people that they interact with. And like she says, she's doing anything she can to find a few minutes of peace in this hellhole. I've seen this before, work relationships and stuff like that. And this one doesn't turn out, unfortunately, for Randy. But it's her escape. She says it herself, like when she gets fired, that she's kind of happy that it happened.
Yeah, I think this is so powerful for the reasons we mentioned before, how it relates to normal people in their workplace. But I think also, like, when we think of interpretive and, like, ambiguous storytellings, there usually are very complex themes and, like, very, like, did this actually happen? Was this a dream? What was this? Like, all of these crazy elements. But here, in such a literal and straightforward story, it's still able to really leave you thinking. I found the ending specifically, like,
right here.
Yeah, like, do you interpret this? And Sabine, the character, is it Sable or Sabine?
I'm not. I'm really bad with names.
Me too, low-key. And they don't really say her name that many times.
No, they don't.
Well, in any case, I think it is very, very powerful to interpret the main character either as, wow, she is so brave that she can muster this horrible situation for her child, or is it terrible that she can't love herself enough to quit and finally, put her happiness before this job. I think that's it's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's another way that it reflects life so much is that there's never, like, when people are in, have a shitty job or whatever, there's no one reason why they stay. It's the money, it's the lack of self-respect, it's just easier to keep this job than get a new one with all of its shortcomings. And look at that, like, the fucking Joker here, like, yeah, and then his stance right here, and then on the next page we have, like, it's just nuts. Like, he looks like he has a bunch of plastic surgery, and then this, it's the expectations are subverted so much, and there are so many times throughout this book where it feels like it's going to turn into something similar to Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, and it never does. It always hints that it's going to go there, and always hints that that's a possibility.
It tricked me multiple times. I thought it was. I mean, Killer Croc basically escapes.
He does, and it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's just another day.
Like, I mean, why the fuck does Two-Face have a do-rag on? Like,
oh my god, I didn't even notice that. That's actually hilarious.
That's so, it's so dumb, but it's so fucking funny. It just tricks you so much. I would say right here is the first instance of it, like,
oh, this
okay,
Man-Bat. Wow.
Yeah, it feels like something is going to explode. Like there's going to be a catalyst that turns this into a fucking nightmare, but it never happens. You know, we keep getting hints throughout it. We get this funny interaction between the Doctor and Harley Quinn where she like calls her a bitch. We see the tension building here, literally pressure, the tension. It's literal, like, and everyone's talking about it. They're like, oh, do you feel the tension? Yeah, somehow he can jump 14 feet and grab the, you know, which that's kind of, I don't want to say this took me out of it, but if I had to choose one thing that I would change, I would make it like 10 feet or, you know, something more realistic, because of how grounded in reality this book is. But yeah, like ouch right here. That's just so funny.
It is so funny.
Another critique I would have for this book is throughout the entire story, and again, he was experimenting with different art styles and stuff like that, but like you can see the pencil lines still, like under all the inks. Like he didn't fully erase the pencils, and I don't know if that was intentional or not.
My lack of experience shows, because I did not notice that at all. I the way I viewed this artistically is like a children's book that is being invaded by, you know, stuff like Man-Bat.
That's such, and shit like this.
Oh my god, it's beautiful.
I will say, not an issue, but there's something that I often ponder. It's hard not to compare it to the potential of what the story could be. Like, this is, like, I love this story. It's fantastic. But I wonder if the story would be better if he just leaned into the creepiness, or have the creepiness and the cartooniness completely separate from one another and not interweave. Like, I wonder if that would create two better products rather than combining them.
I do think to some extent they need to interact for the message to work. I think this relates to what I was saying about not using the Batman universe to its fullest. I think on the one hand, you know, we were saying what more it could have been. I would love to know, like, I think Harley Quinn is probably the one example that I could think, and I guess the Joker too, of like, you know, what brutally realistic versions of these characters look like. But I would love Harvey specifically, but also like they show Scarecrow briefly. I know Killer Croc, I don't really have any faith that they could make him very realistic, but I would love that next step of, okay, this is what it does to the workers, but also what does this take on Arkham Asylum do to the villains? Because they are, you know, realistic depictions of themselves. Joker's plan is so like hilariously small scale. I think it really gave me a chuckle that his whole grand plan is just like, you know, fuck with this one guy. It's very Joker-esque.
Yeah, fuck with the Doctor just by feeding him light bulbs.
Yeah. But I think there was one more step that they could have gone with.
What's so funny about that is that it's worded to where he's been plotting this for like weeks. He's been eating light bulbs himself to force this guy to eat light bulbs for weeks, and it's just ridiculous. And like, I agree, I do wish it went a little further. But because it didn't go so far, that's what makes it so funny. That's what highlights the humor. And it's kind of hard. I know we've been doing it for almost an hour, but it's honestly really hard articulating my thoughts on this story, because I know what Sam Kieth is capable of. Like, while I love this story, I wish it went, this just comes down to personal preference, I guess, but I wish it went further into the creepiness of it, the more fantastical, like you're saying, do more with the Batman universe.
I think the only, and as someone who does not know what Sam Kieth is capable of, very literally, I think the only way that could be problematic is to push it into the Arkham Asylum Serious House territory.
Yes.
That's a tough route to go down. Where would you like more fantastical elements? I'm curious.
Like, no Batman. Like, I think this not having a Batman story, like a Batman as a character in this, I think he's brought up once. Like, his name is said once by the kid at the beginning. I think that's perfect. I think could keep that aspect of it, but I guess not have so many different B plots and kind of focus on the main character just wanting to escape. I guess less fantastical and more horror. But again, like that would take that's just not what the story is aiming for. Like that's not the intention behind this story. And I don't know. I really don't know, because each part is so important to one another, the cartoonish and the little bit creepy fantastical that we get, that without the other, I think this story wouldn't be half as good.
Yeah, I think I am extremely skeptical of when a creator tries to introduce Batman OC. The example that I first had this opinion with was Batman Returns, which is Michael Keaton's second Batman movie.
Yes.
And they have Shrek, the character. Not that Shrek, but just Shrek is played by Christopher Walken, and he's OC. You have this pot of some of the greatest characters known to fiction, and you just make your own, like, shitty Christopher Walken character. And I think there are a lot of new characters in this. I think it's extremely impressive that the protagonist works as an original character, especially so well. But to your point, I definitely think they could have trimmed some of the workplace slice of life characters. I mean, there's a good amount. I think there's probably 5 or 6.
There's so many characters.
Yeah. And in a 97-page story too.
Yeah, and again, like I feel like this is kind of turning into a circular conversation, but that's a fucking workplace drama, like at the end, this definitely feels like the pilot episode of a story, because we get her coming back. Oh, and then we have the literal, like,
I love this page,
turning into a person. It's so ridiculous. Everyone's saying hell, like every single person. She's coming back. Something that I feel like not a lot of people know about Sam Kieth is that he dipped his toes into screenwriting a little bit. And this feels like him stretching that muscle a lot, because it does feel like the pilot of, or like a rough idea of a workplace comedy or workplace drama taking place in Arkham Asylum, just with all of the characters and all of the introduction and stuff. Did you, this section here, like this specific narration, I took that as Arkham Asylum itself talking.
Let me reread it. I would agree. They have a lot of panel angles that could never have been viewed by someone. There are a lot of ones of eyeballs, and I was like, whose eyes are these? I honestly don't know. That's really cool.
And I think because this here, it turning into Monster House, I think that's what this is implying. Yeah, it's so fucking goofy, and I think that just sums up this story perfectly. I don't think that it's so goofy that I only think Sam Kieth could do it. Yeah, I
agree. It's tough because it goes so far into the realism perspective, but then it kind of says, well, let's untighten the screw a little bit. I think given the length and the scope, I'm pretty fine with it. But I think if this were like double the length, I would have a lot more complaints to say.
Something like this is so great because, at least to me, I can imagine a volume 2 and a volume 3 where it slowly turns more into a creepy story, or slowly turns more into like a goofy, cartoonish, like, what if we bring in Batman, but he's like, it's Bruce Wayne and he's wearing like a Groucho Marx sunglasses, and he's like trying to sneak in. Like, anything that I imagined for Batman could fit in this story, like literally any possibility, because it touches every base of Batman. It's goofy and funny and subverts expectations, but what the fuck is this? Like, it's like this weird body horror Monster House type thing.
Yeah, they definitely had a lot of fun with it. I can tell from just this page.
Because, I mean, like I said at the beginning, this is an experimentation to Sam Kieth. Like, he says it in this afterword here. Do you think this was a successful experiment?
I do. I think this reads like a very unique niche in Batman, especially kind of combining, an Adam West type of goofiness to a body horror Grant Morrison type of vibe. I think that is something I've never seen before, and I think it like what I was afraid that this would be was just another Arkham Asylum story. That's what I was afraid, and that's the fact that that fear was proven to be not warranted is the great success of this story. You were saying about like talking about the narrative and how it's not really important. I agree with that. I think it's much more about the sum of its parts than an individual scene or plot development. You know, an example of that is the clock. I think the clock is very emblematic of the experiment of this graphic novel, because the clock, the whole time, it's dripping blood. It's very The Shining. It's very classic horror. And you're thinking like, okay, I had so many theories. I thought like it was a peephole from Joker's cell, or Joker like put, you know, someone there, or like it turns out to just be a dead mouse. And I think the fantastical elements at the end do betray this, but I think it's a very powerful literal narrative way of showing like this is just a building. The real anguish is the mentality of these workers. It isn't some crazy supernatural things are happening here and there, or some collective psychosis. It's just a dead mouse. And I do think it doesn't stick that landing with what we just showed at the end, but I think it's definitely a narrative that is the sum of its parts, not so much, hey, point X, that was really cool.
I think it's showing every possibility of what could go wrong.
Yeah.
You know, at any moment, this could turn into a fucking horror story. And I think that's what Sam Kieth was trying to highlight with it, is because we see Batman go to Arkham Asylum all the time to stop so many different things, to stop so many different villains and stuff like that. And this is just showing, like, because if you think about comics realistically, it's like, goddamn, Batman is stopping villains all of the fucking time.
Yeah.
You know, like that's ridiculous. But this is showing in a very realistic way how that's possible.
I would love, if I had to write a volume 2, aside from not knowing how to write comics at all, I think an interesting angle they could do would be like when they return to Gotham, because Gotham, the city, has so much narrative potential in like the inequality and the crime and how difficult it is to live there as a normal person. I think that could be a really interesting route to explore with these normal workers.
That could be like literally just doing the same thing, but with Gotham instead of Arkham.
Yeah.
That's actually genius.
Oh, I think anyone can use that idea. Just email me when.
Nope. No, you gotta write it.
You gotta draw it then.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, look at it, like the fucking blueprint of the mouse getting crushed. Like, it's literally just telling you how it happened. Like, it's not like someone put this here. It's literally just he just crawled in and it was an unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah, this is a squished mouse had me actually laughing out loud. I was like, oh, yeah, it is.
It's spelt wrong though.
Oh my god, I didn't even notice that. That's hilarious.
Yeah. And in a way, I think this is going to be my closing remark, is that it's kind of like a paradox, because it feels unfinished in the best way possible. Like I was mentioning before, like this just feels like a plot. Like, this just feels like a quick, rough sketch that Sam Kieth did, in that he'll go back to it later and draw this shit here. But he's combining, like, rough ideas, quick, like, scribbles of what the word bubbles, or, like, what the sound effects should be. Like this here, we have these workers here, not detailed at all. Barely any facial expressions. Like, after this, I would recommend just looking at pictures of his Wolverine, but like he's at one point was such a detailed oriented artist, like drawing fucking thousands of hairs individually on Wolverine's arm and stuff. And it's so interesting seeing him dial that back. And because I know what Sam Kieth is capable of, the art feels unfinished, but not in a bad way.
Interesting. I mean, obviously, because I don't know his stuff, I didn't pick up on any of that. I would say for me, it's a really great palate cleanser. It's such a great complementary Batman universe story to all of the classics that we've known and loved. But I think if you read it with like as a primary, let me read a great Arkham Asylum narrative, that's not the mindset you should come into this. I think it works great as a ancillary piece to those.
Most definitely. And like I have a couple of Sam Keith sketchbooks where like they just photocopied a bunch of his work that he's done like in his free time, and it feels like a lot of this. Like so much of it is, you know, these simple caricatures, you know, like this paper looks mildewed, a bunch of goofy stuff, and then out of nowhere, boom, you're given one of the best Joker panels of all time.
Yeah.
In this realistic paper. That actually looks like real paper now that I think about it. It's just unfortunate that he passed so early. Like so many aspects of his well-being and his personal life and his hatred of his work and insecurities really. But I think without those, we wouldn't have got this story. Because this, to me, and reading the bit at the end, feels like him trying to find a new love for art.
That's really well said. I find it deeply saddening given that we have basically called this like an unfinished product, or like we wanted more, and the fact that we won't get any more because he's sadly passed. But it's beautiful that we have this, and I think it really stands on its own.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I can't stress it enough. Like, I love Sam Keith, and me saying this feels unfinished isn't a bad thing, but it just feels like, yeah, I mean, he says it himself at the end. It feels like an experiment. And they briefly mention it somewhere in here where he's like, he drew this beautiful picture of Killer Croc, and he didn't know what to do with it. And his editor was like, just put this, just write around it. Like write the story up to that point, and that feels like the entire writing process for the story. Like he drew and painted and a bunch of other shit for a few great panels, and then he had to somehow make that in a cohesive story.
Interesting. I think of it a lot of where he puts the really awe-inspiring art. Ironically, like this might be one of the best pieces of art in the entire graphic novel, and it's not even in the graphic novel. And I just imagine that he like drew it. He's like, I don't know where to put this. I'll put it in the Arkham Afterwards section. And it's like, what the fuck, dude? Like this is
exactly
sick.
There's so many influences here. Like you have the influence of Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, where you're starting to feel claustrophobic. No one is like because how small people are in the panels. You have like the weird, like cartoonish caricature element, the weird perspective, this beautiful like painting, simplistic. It's not painting. It looks like colored pencils, but then it's juxtaposed with so many different things, like these caricatures, this gross fucking melting. Like what is any of this? I briefly mentioned this, but I feel like expanding on it a little more would be beneficial. The tension overall just kind of feels like it doesn't go anywhere. Not in a bad way, in a way that subverts the expectations. And I kind of think that, again, highlights the fact that this is just a realistic workplace setting. Like, at work, you know, when you're just so pissed off by everything, everyone's making you mad, your boss sucks, the employees suck, everything sucks, you know, you drop a milk jug and it explodes everywhere. Everything sucks, like the Descendants said. And everything just seems like it's going against you, but nothing happens. All of these things that build this tension and make you antsy to go home and leave this place just not going anywhere. That's such a great reflection of a real life workplace.
I totally agree. I think of all of the amazing adjectives I can use for just like the plethora of great Batman stories, I never really think of the humanity behind them. And I find this really does occupy that well. I recently had one of my favorite people leave my job, and I felt exactly like the main character did when Randy leaves. And I just find that the human level is just one that I never really considered, and I think it's a great selling point.
Yeah, most definitely.
Oh, if you could find it, the freaking comic is impossible to find.
yeah, it's just so unfortunate, and like I wish my favorite artist was someone like, I don't know, fucking Jim Lee. I'm editing a Jim Lee video right now, and people like him. Like, I wish he was my favorite because his shit will always be in print.
Yeah.
Like, trying to find the Max legally, you know, and because you have to buy it secondhand and not pirate it, it's like impossible, you know. They printed it in a trade, but like each trade is $80 to $100 a piece. Now they're going to skyrocket. It was Image Comics, but there was like a weird rights issue with the Max, and Sam Kieth got sued, and it's like no one really knows what happened with it. But yeah, that's one of the issues why it never got printed again. But also, 'cause Sam Kieth didn't like his work, so of course he's not going to push for his works to stay in print. But yeah, it's unfortunate. The comic world lost a great, just a overall great dude, and it's so sad to see. But the silver lining through this is that so many people are talking about him, and I really hope that this opens a lot of people's minds to his and eyes to his work, because he's criminally underrated.
It opened my eyes.
And yeah, and I hope you check out more of his stuff. I hope everyone checks out more of his stuff, because literally unlike anyone else. Like, his influences are nuts. Like, there's Frank Frazetta, there's but also like classic cartooning. Like, it's nuts. It makes me sad that he's no longer here.
Well said.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Please go check out his channel. We did a video talking about Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, if that hasn't been obvious. And yeah, I genuinely just love his channel so much, and I want more people to check it out.
Thank you for having me on. This was really great.
Of course, Doug. Yeah. Do you have a favorite Sam Kieth story? Leave them in the comments below. Gotta keep that engagement up.
Of course. I thought you were asking me, and I was like, well, this is one of one.